And again, dear author keeper, this is again another moment that we are about to just enjoy this wonderful video. And I'm pretty sure you will learn a lot out of this video because in this video, you will be able to kind of like understand the mind of all of these men. In this clip, you have JC Peterson, my guy, the only one that knows how to do his thing and he does it wonderful. And Dr. Omar, I mean, I've met him, I've known him for quite a time now on social media, on internet basically. And this other guy with the lady is pretty much the host. And this guy, I'm not quite sure about him, but I've not met him before. But this is the first time, and I think we will be kind of like really enjoy the whole thing about this clip, and it will be kind of like an instructive moment that we will kind of like learn from one of the most, I think most of them are kind of like the leading voice in the black community right now. So, but before we actually hit into that, remember this is Be the Light, Share the Light, and Shine the Light. We are just putting our own mind into the things that is running out in the world. Remember, we are the salt of the earth, and Jesus sent us to take hold of this whole system. And that is just what I'm doing my own part here, just putting forth all this content and making sure that the mind of Christ is being put among all these things. And I will be kind of like just jumping in and giving you my own thought on what is going on and giving you some tip on how to understand people that are functioning on emotion and some other people that just function according to facts, that function according to statistic, number, reality, touchable things that does not deal with feeling. So before I actually keep continue talking, let's just go into the video. Remember, this was Be the Light, this is Share the Light, and this is Shine the Light. Guys, enjoy the video.
Reverend Jesse, you say that there's no such thing as a sellout, but you can admit that the word sellout does exist and that it is used, right?
Yeah, it is used just like the word racism. We all know that there's no such thing as racism. It's a word that made up to deceive the blind. And so when they use the word sellout, it's meant to divide and conquer. But if you're not in a fallen state, meaning that Satan is not your daddy, you can see the game that's being played. Like Dr. Umar just said, he just spoke as a blind man. He has no idea what he's talking about because there's no such thing as slavery syndrome or whatever he said. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. And in the good old days when boys were boys and men were men, men knew that and they led their wives and children in the right way to go. And they did have a conduct of morality. They treated everyone they would like in the way that they would like to be treated, never mind the color. They taught their children how to work and be responsible and not blame and whine. And they didn't put it out there as though they couldn't make it. Dr. Umar Johnson just
Well, I
made
don't
up
think we should.
words.
I don't.
So right here from the intro, the mind of Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson is kind of like a very clear cut opinion in what is actually going on right now in the black community. And I will even say community, I think is what most of us should be thinking about when it comes to the word racism. Is a made up word. We on earth only have one race, the human race. There is no such thing like black race, white race, brown race, Mexican race, or whatever. And it's just a very confusing term that the devil used. And the only idea, the only end goal behind that word racism is to divide. There is no other way to see it. Every time when you see someone using that term, racism, the end goal behind that term is to divide and conquer. So yes, I think he's right on point with this particular argument, and let's check what the order will be kind of like talking next.
Reverend Jesse, I don't think we should suggests that one person knows more than the other, in a sense of you saying you know it all and anyone else on the panel knows less. That's a little unfair.
Yeah, well, I may not know my flowers, but I know Dr. Umar Johnson is blind and that he's wrong.
So the host is kind of like trying to play the moderator and kind of like be the referee. But I think it was not her role to actually do that, because, it is an idea, debate. You're putting out idea out there, and we are looking to see the one that dominate. Now, if she's talking down, I think a very simple idea, by the way, because racism, if you look at it closely, you will notice that there is nothing profitable out of that term racism apart from dividing people. So for her to just do what she did, it was not really, and by the way, it was JC's opinion. He just laid down the thing on the ground with facts, because when you study that word racism, in its core, it means nothing, because there is no two type of race on earth. We only have one race, the human race, and that is it.
And he doesn't know God, so he's telling people words, fancy words, in order to deceive them. If you knew that our battle is a battle between good and evil, then you wouldn't make up words in order to deceive. You would tell the truth and hope that those who are blind may wake up and see the right way to go. I grew up on a plantation.
And that is a very critical remark right there to take on seriously. Because many times when we are debating issue, if you don't understand the fundamental about the particular problem, if you don't know the depth of whatever you are arguing, which most of the time, what I have realized as growing up and, dealing with situation, most of the human difficulty come from a spiritual perspective. If you are trying to deal with human problem without looking into the spiritual realm, you would be more likely doing more damage than fixing any problem. And the point that JC is making here is critical, because what they are actually debating here, and that term racism, is a spiritual attack on the human race, like literally. And it does not really care about who it is, because anyone can literally hide behind that term and do whatever they want. So yes, it's critical, it's spiritual, and everyone that should approach it in a spiritual perspective. And I've just laid down a very basic understanding about it. You don't see two different races on earth. We only want one race, the race of human, and that is it.
Down in Alabama, under the Jim Crow law, and back then, black people.
There were no slaves on that plantation.
Well, yeah, they had. Matter of fact, my grandparents' parents ran the plantation, but they weren't slaves when I was growing up. And the point is, Black people had a sense of morality then, and they loved what was right. They worked hard. They loved their country, and they didn't blame because the men were leading.
And one thing I would just like to kind of like add into what he's saying right here is that the word racism was actually meant to divide the Black people. You know, Black people from the origin of this earth, as the human race is concerned, have always been the source of life. And coming here in America and going through slavery, that was the pathway that was destined for the Black man. Because, you know, when you even study this in the Bible, you'll find out that, you know, Egypt was built by Israelite. So Israelite was Black men initially. And that is just the way things in life work. And the reason is very simple. And that is why the spiritual part is really critical to understand this whole package. Satan is the God of this earth, and he is doing everything evil to frustrate the plan of God. That is why slavery was part of the Black journey here in America. So it is more spiritual than physical.
In the way.
Hold that thought, Reverend Jesse.
Now the Black men saw like women.
Hold that thought, Reverend Jesse. Dr. Umar, go ahead. I don't want him to bring your name up and not allow you to respond.
It's okay. I had been on
So, and this is one thing that really obsesses me most of the time with these journalists, when they always have this tendency of always trying to kind of like they want to protect or defend. You know, when I look at these three gentlemen, they are all adult, mature people. They have, their mind, they think. I mean, he definitely understand what Jesse is pushing, and one of the reasons why she's doing that is because most of them does not deeply understand the spiritual aspect, but from which Jesse is talking from, because Jesse is talking from a very deep spiritual aspect part, and that spiritual part is what most people don't want to see, because the devil is more interested to keep us out of what he is doing spiritually, because spiritually that is where many things happen in the spirit. And it's unfortunate here that she's playing this game, trying to tell Dr. Umar to kind of like intervene, as if Umar was not able to intervene, or the show was about to end or something like that. So it's just this whole scenario, like what she just did. Honestly, I think it's not just. She should normally wait when his turn comes for him to intervene. So she should, don't, journalists and they have been doing this. I've seen this in many, television shows. Like journalists, instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing, telling the truth and doing their own part, they are kind of like playing this game of giving time to, I don't know what. I mean, hopefully you've seen the whole thing.
Reverend Jesse's show before, and they have been trying diligently to have me come back. And one of the reasons I did not return to the show, I believe that Jesse Lee Peterson knows better. In fact, he would be a textbook definition of a sellout, because he is the type of Black man who will bend over backwards to absolve the American white power structure of any responsibility for what happens to Black people. And like many sellouts, they always ignore, or they try to retreat away from acknowledging the role that systemic racism plays in the life of Black people.
And that is actually the term they are using now, the word systemic racism. There is no such thing as systemic racism. We know America was built on slavery, and we know many people did take advantage of this whole thing of slavery. But when it comes to life and existence living, it depends to individual. Individual are the one that determine what happened to them, and this power is tabernacle within us. And again, it comes back to this spiritual part, where most Black people, especially here in America, they don't even notice that they are in one of the most luckiest country on the world. There is no country like America. And when you put your mind into doing something here in this country, nothing can stop you. Slavery has been a thing for over 250 years ago, and people has been progressively moving away from all those evil things that happened back then. So speaking about it in this particular century is just wrong, to say the least. So, and even using the word systemic racism, I think it is more divisive than reuniting people. And him using that term, and most of the time when you see people using it, it is purely emotional, because they are trying to attack the emotional part, the emotional attachment part of that particular word.
Racism is not only about the individual mistreatment of Black people, it is about the systemic mistreatment of Black people. See, racism is a system that all white people participate in to disadvantage all members of another group. So you don't opt out, and members of the target group don't opt in or opt out. But what they can do, as Jesse Lee Peterson that's so effectively done in his career is they can identify with the power structure. They can identify with white racism, and they can carve out a niche for themselves by defending the racism that is attacking Black people, as opposed to defending Black people against that racism. A Black man in America who does not stand up for his people and in turn aligns himself with the structure that is eating away.
Okay, and I would really like to address this particular term that he just made, the blind man that cannot stand up for his people. You know, this idea of always thinking that you can stand up for order, that is sometimes one of the problems that as a community or society most people have. We as individuals, we are responsible for our lives. Now, it is clear that there are some people that don't have the voice or don't have the space, the platform, or whatever to speak up their mind. But that does not necessarily give anybody the right to think that they are speaking for other people. So I'm just kind of like trying to put that in there, because many times people, instead of using the platform and their voice to push order to take right decision about their life and do the right thing about their life, they are now speaking for those people and even making decision in the place of those people. Meanwhile, most of the time, the decision that they are taking, like the one we are seeing right here in this particular, show, he's speaking from the place of emotion. And we know slavery was nothing good. There is nothing good about that whole story. But when you are trying to move forward, when you are trying to go out of I don't even know how to put a word on what this demonic operation of racism is actually doing. But when you are trying to get away from it, what you do is that you must allow people or teach people how to take responsibility. Every community, every society, every group of people always have this thing we call safety among them. They always have this trust and this relationship issue. If I don't know you, I can't easily relate with you. And the way I relate with someone that I know is always different from the way I relate with another person. And white people, because they are white, it is normal for them to relate with each other better than with any other color person. And that should not be an opportunity for most Black people to use it as a term of racism, or like what he just said here, systemic racism. Meanwhile, if any Black person in America decide to embark on the journey of making it, it is quite possible. And there are many examples. Recently, I saw on CNN, Morgan Freeman and this guy on CNN, I think I will kind of like, his name will come back to me. And he was asking me the question, does racism is a problem at this particular time? Like, does racism still pose a problem? That was how he asked the question. And Morgan Freeman clearly asked him, like, now, right now, he said, yeah, he said no. Because racism is not more an issue. And for a doctor, again, to be speaking like this and making it a systemic, I know exactly what he meant by what he's saying. It is not about individual, like, entity or one or two white person, but it's a power structure. I think he will be kind of like developing it earlier, but I think I will be just putting it some thought after his idea or what he will be saying earlier. So let's listen.
At the opportunity can go very far in this country. Senator Tim Scott is an example. Jesse Lee Peterson is an example. And we will continue to create these types of personalities, Sister Tammi, if we don't come up with the code and if the Black community doesn't start holding its members accountable for dysfunctional behavior.
And there were slaves in America. That is not happening today, and it wasn't happening when I was.
So you see what he just said earlier by using Tim Scott, like what I heard, I think it was The View. Was it The View? I think yes. One of the lady there that said that Tim Scott and many other Black men that have married in America, they are the exception, but they are not the rule. That is, again, a deception from the devil. This is not something that we, especially black people in this nation, should not be thinking like that. Because if you are thinking that you cannot make it because of the skin of your color, you will be stranded even when you have potential within you. And we have seen again and again a lot of people, when we even go down to artists and music and everything, you will see that a lot of black people do make it. When we are talking about, someone like Oprah Winfrey, so she's right there at the top. Barack Obama was president, twice elected. And this, little evolution. I mean, America is not perfect. That's not what we are arguing about. But it's just the fact that some black people, like Dr. Omar right here, instead of uplifting black people by encouraging them to take risks, to dare certain things, they are instead blaming the race factor and telling people de facto in their mind that whatever they think, whatever they will do, they will not succeed. And it's just heartbreaking to see how people does not understand the spiritual aspect part of this whole thing, but only deal with the physical one. And I think one of the things that, Dr. Omar was kind of like talking about earlier was the fact that, corporate, big company, they always favorite white people beside black people. Now, it is not up to the white people with their corporate and their business to recruit black people. Black people can create their own business. And it is quite possible here in America. And we have already seen a lot of black business, booming, gaining ground and, involving. And it just takes the power of the will. Instead of people blaming color, black people can take initiative. And it is really, really possible. So for me personally, this is just something that I'm really having hard time with. Hearing people, instead of sitting down, planning how to take over business, company, many other things, they are instead discouraging because, no matter what we may say, black people, they are still the foundation of this earth. And if the one that are here in America understand that fact, they will be able to now do greater things, even way beyond what we think about. But it's unfortunate that we have people like Omar that still say things like systemic racism. That is not just right. And by the way, we have a lot of, black African America that comes here and that do great. They do wonderful than some of black African American here. And I think one of the big issue here in America is the fact that some white people have chose to keep the black people under a very dark, oppressive, demonic power. And by using every mechanism available in the government, in social, in society, and even in their local community. And that is a fact. And the reason why those white people have gained those type of power, because few black men actually stand up and take real initiative and push black people to come out from their, I will not even use the word fear, but it seems like nobody is bold enough to step up and to shift the game. Just shift the game and think different, do different. But thank God, a lot of black people are getting it. That is why you are seeing a lot of them are, reading the news. They are interpreting every information that they are having, and they are learning, they are involving. But one thing that still breaks my heart is people still talking like this. This is not the language for black people right now. Black people should be ignoring every possible racism and start fighting their way to overcome the dominance of white people in different structure. I know some people will bring the argument that maybe they will not allow you, they will stop you, or they will bring. Let us as black people make it there and allow them now to do it, because God, God is fair and he sees the effort of everyone. If you make it there and they try to attempt something, the world today is more digital than never before. There is a lot of way of communicating and of showing unfairness to the public. And if there is any black man that goes to, maybe, let's say, to a bank, and that is also another part that I might have an opportunity to kind of like talk about it a little bit, because the whole, normal America at this particular time is suffering from this grasp of the financial system by a one leaning way of thinking group of people. When we are talking about company like BlackRock, Rothschild, we are talking about people like this Jews guy that basically finance almost, I think, is 30 or 20% of the judges here in America, especially the Democrat elect ones. George Soros, they are just this minor group of people that manage almost the whole financial department in America. And the normal people here in America, and when I mean the normal people, I mean those that are not into all this crazy woke stuff that is going on now, the DEI and all these other things. Because when they did adopt all this DEI thing, many people didn't want it, but because they control the bank, they were able to push forward their agenda. And this is the mindset that most black Americans should be taking. Building their own business, creating their own bank, and even setting a system in place where they are the one owning their stuff. And they will stop complaining about racism. So I think that's basically it for today. Let me see if we can go like 1 or 2 other minutes of this whole clip, because it is a little bit painful to go through all this thing. But the only one that is kind of like making a little bit of sense here is Jesse Lee Peterson, because he's not speaking in a natural perspective. He's going spiritually and natural at the same time. And that is those type of thought that we really need now in order to heal out of this whole, slavery and racism thing.
When I was growing up in Alabama, this idea that slavery is the cause of the lack of morality for black people is insane. It's just another sign of an illogical mindset.
Right.
Because when I was growing up, the bathroom was outdoors, outside bathroom. I had to work the cotton fields and things like that. But it was the character of the man. And when I was growing up, black people at that time were known to be men and women of character. Today, black people...
Exactly. The same thing Martin Luther King said, that don't judge a man by his appearance, but by the content of the character of the person. And that is exactly what he's saying. And most of the time, people that are even whining about slavery, I'm pretty sure if they were the one back then, nothing would have been maybe done about the whole thing. Because the black that were in slavery over 250 years ago, they did everything in their power to remove this wonderful nation, America, out of that, sinful past. And it was a personal initiative from every black American back then that did that. They took the initiative and they went and, make sure that slavery was abolished. And many people don't even talk about it enough, but there were a lot of black people that prayed. Yes, they prayed. They worship God. They pray song. Some of this music called Amazing Grace. These were black people that sang those music. But because they knew that their bondage was not merely physical or natural, but it was more importantly spiritual. and they have to walk their way spiritually to achieve a lot of things physically. But it's so sad that today most people are just using the term slavery or racism to just, take advantage of things that most of them are not even aware of. And by the way, remember guys, this word, be the light, share the light, shine the light. And it was this my own way of kind of like interacting and putting out content and sharing information about this whole thing that is happening. I'll be coming back with part 2 of this video. I really want us to go through everything because it's a long video, and their thought, help us break boundary and help us go deeper into things that most of, especially Black American, my little experience here in America, I've realized that the most disfavored people on earth, I will even use that term, I'm kind of like risky a little bit to use that term, on earth are Black American. I think one of the biggest problems that they have is that they are not informed. That is one of the biggest things I've noticed. A lot of Black American does not have the right information. They do have a lot of information, but they don't have the right one. And they are always in the place of complaining and asking. Meanwhile, they should be in the place of taking initiative and making decision about their life. So that's basically it. So thank you guys for being around and watching this short clip. It's kind of like a little bit long, and I spend most of the time kind of like just interjecting and putting my mind in there. And also remember, this is being the light, shining the light and sharing it. And I'm just kind of like picking into all this clip and just giving you my thought. And this wonderful clip is on YouTube, and it is Tammi hosting it, and it's a wonderful kind of like interesting video. You can go on YouTube and get it. What I would always like to tell people when you are on my channel, you're watching my content, what I would do all the time is that I would tell you to like Jesus, share Jesus, comment about Jesus, follow Jesus, and subscribe to Jesus. It is not about my YouTube channel. It is about being the light. It is about shining the light. It is about sharing the light. And on that note, guys, see you tomorrow with part 2 of this particular video. Ciao, ciao.